Good morning. My name is Gina Thomas. I am the training manager here at C&K Systems and your hostess for Training Bites, a digestible approach to counterpoint training. Now, Marty, who usually joins me, is off today. So David Villag, who was on our technical services team, was kind enough to join us. So he'll also help in answering any questions. That's really not a picture of David, by the way. He doesn't have one, so I had to make one up. So if you ever meet David in real life and say, that's not the picture I saw of you. Um, some of you probably have vendor minimum order requirements. So we're going to discuss that today because that is possible in Counterpoint. Or maybe you have a need to purchase something at a different level than each, which is typically how you sell. Sell it by the each, but I need to purchase it by the 6-pack. So we'll look at that today. How do you prevent your buyers from purchasing discontinued items? We'll talk about that. What if your last cost is incorrect? When you look at your item record, don't panic. That's okay. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. A common question I get is, so quantity on hand and quantity available, what's the difference? What if they don't match? Or another one, I have this backpack that I'm selling and the UPC was 12345 when I originally got it, but now that same backpack has a different UPC. Can I have more than one barcode for an item? Absolutely, and I'll show you how. So we're going to talk about some cool item features today, things like attributes, descriptions, alternate units, and even more than that. We'll also take a look at inventory records, which is where you can look at your quantitative values and also manually set min-max. We'll also look at vendor item records. A lot of people overlook vendor item records. The vendor item records is where you can leverage those minimum orders, and it's actually where Counterpoint gets cost to suggest to you on a purchasing or receiving document. And there's some nice informational value in vendor item records, like, the latest PO number, the last receive date. So we'll take a look at that as well. So when it comes to quantities on hand available, in a nutshell, available is your live quantity. It's what you have right now. On the status, and I get this question a lot, what's the difference? What's the difference between discontinued and inactive? Discontinued will still allow you to purchase and receive the item. Inactive will not allow you to purchase or receive the item. And if you're a Galaxy customer, inactive will remove this item from Galaxy. Descriptions and attributes, again, more overlooked fields in Counterpoint that you can leverage. So you have all these descriptions, short, long, additional, 1, 2, 3, where you can further describe the product. Now, they don't have any reporting value. However, these descriptions can be added to your table view. They can be added to your lookups. They can be filtered on in reports or in lookups or table view. And they're keyword searchable. So if you ever do a search for an item and you just stick to the item number or the general description, you can actually broaden that by putting words in the additional descriptions to search by. And I'll show you a few examples of that later. Something else that you don't see by default on the description tab are attribute fields. So if the main tab and the descriptions just aren't enough to describe the product, we can have up to 6 attributes, and it's super easy to set up. And attributes, again, you can add them to your table view, your lookups, your filters. There's reports for them, and you can filter on them in reports. Alternate units. This is where you can sell something by the each or by the dozen. So what's nice in Counterpoint is you don't need 2 separate SKUs, one to sell the each, one to sell the dozen. You can have one SKU where you sell both, but your dozen, of course, you'd have a higher price. If you're a Galaxy customer, alternate units do not go to Galaxy. But alternate units are for more than just selling. You can also use alternate units for purchasing. So perhaps you always sell it by the each, but you purchase it by the dozen. So I'll show you how to do that today. Barcodes. Barcodes are unlimited. You can have as many barcodes as you like for a single item. And no matter which one of those barcodes you sell, Counterpoint's going to find that item. You can also define barcodes for your alternate units. I have a barcode for an each and I have a barcode for a 6-pack. And of course, if you sell apparel, gridded items, you would probably want a barcode for each and every color and size. On the other tab of your item record is a place to specify warranty periods if you offer warranties. And this is pretty nice and it's fairly automatic. Let's say you put in a warranty period of 30 days. If the customer purchases that product today, then the warranty period is until September 1st or 3rd. You do the math, but it will print on the receipt. So the customer will know that warranty date range. You can also enable items to be EBT qualified or weighed at the scale at point of sale. But something else that's overlooked is the prompt code. So if you have age-restricted merchandise, you can actually set up to 3 prompt codes. Not that I would set up 3, but at least 1. You get to actually set up a prompt code to prompt your cashier to check ID and enter a birth date. Inventory records. If you ever notice when you're looking at an item record, in the left-hand corner, there's a box called inventory. I have a picture of it right up here. It looks like this. So when you go into that inventory box, what you see are like cost values, average cost. That's a good one to know. Average cost is what shows on your reports, not last cost. You can manually set min-max values here, and you can see other quantitative values like committed, quantity on POs, quantity on a customer order, on a customer back order, on a customer special order, or even quantities on transfer outs and transfer ins. So a lot of good information. Same with vendor item records, lots of good information. When you build a new item, Counterpoint automatically builds the vendor item record for you. And if you want to look at it, again, on the item page itself, there's a box at the bottom called vendor items. So when you open up vendor items, you can see the vendor item number, their catalog number, that pulls from the vendor item number on the main screen of the item record. You can see the vendor description, that pulls from the description on the main page of the item record, but you can change it to be something different. And the vendor's list price, that's the retail pulling from price 1. But if you have an MSRP for the vendor, you could put a different list price there. It's just informational, doesn't do anything. Something else that's pretty handy about being in the vendor item record is the information you can see on the last order tab and the last receipt tab, which really should say last received. But anyways, good information. What was the order date? What was the PO number? What date did I receive it? And at what cost? Okay, let's get into the software and take a look at everything. And let's move that out of the way and dismiss that. Okay, so I'm going to start on an item record. And I'm going to pull up my mini backpack. On your toolbar, here's your toolbar up here. This is a toolbar. You have this little piece of paper. You'll see this piece of paper on an item record, on a customer record, on a vendor record, and a purchase request. What it's intended for are notes. So you can put a note on an item, a note on a customer, a note on a purchasing document, a note on a vendor. When you click on this piece of paper, this is what you see. You have to have a note ID, and you can simply use date and time, and then this becomes just information. So if I save out of here, I want you to notice how that icon changed. See how now it has writing on it? So if somebody's looking at an item or a customer and they see that, they can actually click on it to see the note. So I'm just going to click on it. Now, it doesn't come up right away, of course, but you have black arrows up here, so you can just call it up. So that's okay, but there's another feature that I like a little bit better than this that's really much more helpful. If you make a note ID of auto, that's short for automatic. That's how I remember it. If you make a note ID of auto, when you select this item or customer at point of sale, the note you attach will automatically pop up. So then here you can put, a note. Maybe you want to have somebody check Bill's address. When you put your notes here, you can actually make them a little fancier by clicking on this. And you can change the font, you can change the font style, you can change the size, you can even change the color if you like. So it looks like that. And again, when someone selects this item at point of sale, this note's automatically going to pop up. But there's another use for this that I like even better, especially when it comes to my items, not so much my customers. So I'm going to make it an auto note, short for automatic. And I sell this mini backpack. It's a Coach mini backpack. So I went out to Google and I just looked for the image. And I like to get the little thumbnail images. They fit nicer. But if you go to an image and you just right click on it and you copy image. So don't copy the link, copy the image. Then you go into your auto note and do Control V for paste, or you can click on the little clipboard here. It puts the picture right in there, which is pretty cool. This might be handy for purchasing too. If you have an auto note on an item at point of sale and in purchasing, this will pop up. So let me show you how that works at point of sale. So I'm just going to close out of here, and I'm going to close out of my item record for now, and we'll go into point of sale. Sometimes when you minimize, it just acts silly. So let's go here. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and put in that item number. There's the image. And of course, once you get the image into the note field, you can resize it a little bit. It will kind of distort the image, but this is pretty handy. And if this pop-up is too big, you can always make it smaller. Okay, let's go back to items. We'll find my mini backpack. So a note has to have an ID of auto. Now, the reason why that note ID has to be auto is that's the way my system is configured. If you want to have a different note ID to trigger a pop-up, like maybe you like avocado better than auto, there is a control for it. So if you go to Setup, Purchasing Control, see right here, Item Auto Display Note. So whatever you type here would be the note ID you would use to have that note pop up automatically. Maybe you just like 1, 2 because it's easier. You can have separate ones for vendor display notes. You don't want it to be auto. You want it to be 1, 2, 3 or ABC. And the same for your purchase request. I know this says PO, but it's purchase request. So this is the control where you say this is what the note ID needs to be in order to automatically pop it up. Okay, so that's item notes. Highly underused, very honestly. The next thing I want to talk about, again, something that I find is very underused, are category margins. If you set margins on your categories, you get this really nice visual. So right here on the item record, the visual I'm getting is this red down arrow. And what that red down arrow is telling me is, this item is not meeting the category margins. And if I hover over it, you can see I'm currently getting 40% margin. My minimum for the category is 50. And so I'm not even meeting the minimum. My target's 65. So that's why I get the green down arrow. You can also just click on the arrow to see what Counterpoint's suggesting. So if I go into the red arrow, I can see here, well, if you really want your minimum of 50%, you need to be charging $60. And I could click on use this price if I want to use it. If you want to meet your target margin of 65, this needs to be your selling price. And you could use this price if you like. But currently you're getting 40% margin because this is what you're charging. Now you can change the price down here. You can even have a rounding rule so it ends in 99 cents. This is kind of a global rounding rule though. Everything will become 99 cents as you add them. I'm going to just click OK. So it's not, a different rounding rule for each item. It is global. See how it rounded into 99? And if I don't like it, I can change it. Maybe I want it to be 55 now. Still not going to help me meet my minimum margin. Where these margins are extremely helpful is in your table view. So I'm just going to save this and I'm going to go to table view. At a glance, you can see items that are not meeting your minimum. Those are red arrows. Just meeting the minimum. Those are the dashes. Or exceeding the target. Those are the green arrows. This is helpful because, maybe you have something with a red arrow. And again, if I hover over it, maybe you are selling it at too low a price. Maybe the vendor's charging you too much. Maybe your margins are too aggressive. I have 50 as my minimum, 65 as my target, and maybe that's too aggressive. You can change your margins as often as you like. They don't structurally change anything in the database. They don't affect anything. All they do is give you this visual. And here's where you set them. And it's super easy. So if you go to Setup, Inventory, and you're going to go to Categories, and I would just work through them logically. So if you just go to this right-facing arrow, it'll just bring up your first category. Now, there's a lot of noise on this page. All you care about when it comes to margins is price one minimum and target. So if you put something up here, it's not going to be helpful. It's not going to create that visual for you. It's not going to help. That's just informational. You have to put it on price one minimum and then target. So, and let's say you set your margins and then 10 minutes later or a day later, you change your mind. You just come back to categories, find your category, and then make the margin something different. Maybe I'm going to make this 58%. Make it whatever you like. Okay, so that's margins. Very helpful. At a glance information through your item record. Next, I want to talk about the vendor item number. This is the catalog number the vendor uses. I call it item number 1003, mini backpack, but when I order it from my vendor, they call it 123456. So a couple of things significant about the vendor item number. Number one, it's a search engine. So if you put anything in this vendor item number field and you free type it in an item number field, Counterpoint's going to find the mini backpack. So for example, if I type my vendor item number, press my enter key, see how Counterpoint finds the mini backpack? That works at point of sale too. It works in receiving, it works in purchasing, it works in adjustments. So vendor item number is not the only search engine here. This barcode is also a search engine, not your additional barcodes, only the barcode here on the main tab. Your item number is also a search engine. So what I mean by that is anytime you see item number, cursor blinking there, magnifying glass, you can free type either the item number or the vendor item number or the barcode from the main tab. Okay. Something else to know about vendor item number, I get this question all the time. People want to see it on their sales history reports. Vendor item number is not available on any sales report. The intention of the vendor item number was to print on your purchasing documents and your receiving documents, and that's the only place you're going to see the vendor item number. Okay, let's talk about on hand versus available. So a lot of people don't understand, especially if you're in a multi-store setting. A lot of people think that when they sign into their main store and they're looking at on hand and available, that's what's on hand and available at the main store. This is a company value. This is not a single store value. It is a company value. So if you have more than one store and you want to see the breakdown, how many are each one of my stores, if you click on this little Z up here, you can see I have 10 at East, 40 at Main, 5 at Storage. Quantity available is your live quantity at this very moment in time. So if you come in during the day, unless you're a Galaxy customer, it doesn't work this way in Galaxy. If you're Counterpoint front end. So at the beginning of the day, if you look at this item, 55 on hand, 55 available. As soon as someone sells one, the available goes to 54. Then at the end of the day, when we post our sales, the on hand catches up with the available and goes to 54. So quantity on hand, quantity available. Available is your live quantity. Now earlier, I went into the Zoom just to see how many were at each store. But let's say you go into your Zoom and you get that dreaded SQL error, or I can't get into the Zoom, your services aren't running, and you really, really need to see that breakdown. If you come down here to the lower left-hand corner to where it says inventory, and you go to the table view, you can see your on hands at each of your locations. Now, and it's right here in this column. And if you don't see that column, you can always go into your column designer and add it. When it comes to the status, everything defaults to active. Your other choices are discontinued and inactive. So discontinued, if you try to sell the item, purchase the item, receive the item, Counterpoint's going to be fine with that. Now, if you want to get a warning about it, there's a control that I'll show you in a minute. So if you don't set the control, marking an item as discontinued, you'll only know that if you're looking at the item record. If you set an item to inactive, you can still sell it. You'll get a warning, but you can still sell it. If it's inactive, you cannot add the item to a customer order, special order, back order, or layaway. If the item is inactive, you cannot add the item to a purchasing document or a receiving document. And if you're Galaxy, it'll remove the item from Galaxy. Now, let's say you do set the item to inactive, and a day later you say, oh no, I really want it to be active. No big deal. Just come back and change the flag. No big deal. And if you're Galaxy and it disappeared out of Galaxy, on your next sync, it'll reappear. All right, so let's talk again about discontinued. If you want your people to be warning they are selling or purchasing or receiving a discontinued item, there's a control for that. And I'm just going to say no to that. So I'm going to go to setup, and I'm going to go to purchasing, and I'm going to go to control. I'm going to go to the activity tab. Here in this purchase order box, here's the discontinued item warning right here. In this receiving box, here's the discontinued item warning. Now there's a separate control for point of sale. So if I go to setup, point of sale, this control actually lives in stores. I should have had that open and minimized, but let's go to stores. And then you have to click on the lines tab. And down here in this box, show discontinued item warnings for if it's sold, if it's returned, if it's put on a layaway, a customer order, back order, or special order. There is no control for inactive. It's hard-coded. And I'll just go ahead and save my changes there. Yes, I know. That is fine. Okay, let's talk about descriptions next. Again, underused fields. Okay, so if I go to additional description here, the short description when you're building a new item will automatically copy from here the first 15 letters. If you're building a new item and you tabbed the description field, Counterpoint will copy the entire description to the description field, and then you can have, up to 15 characters on these. The additional description, same thing, up to 50 characters. Again, there's no reporting value. So you'll never see these columns on a report. However, they can be added to lookups, table view, filters. Okay, the additional descriptions and the long description and the short description, these are all keywords searchable. So in order to take advantage of these, I'd be fairly broad. Let's say I sold wine and my mini backpack was compatible with fish. Or let's say I want to designate my items as being gluten-free. Or maybe I want to designate them as cotton. Again, or cotton. Again, they're keyword searchable. This is just giving your people a way to find things at point of sale or in purchasing or receiving, wherever you see a lookup, an item lookup. So if I go into my item lookup, and I'll just scroll down here at the bottom so you know I'm not cheating, and I just type, my customer comes in and says, I'm serving fish tonight. What wine goes really well with fish? My salespeople could type fish and bring up all the items where Counterpoint sees fish in one of the additional descriptions. Or what if one of my salespeople are looking for something that's gluten-free? A customer's having lunch and they want to eat gluten-free. So you can see, we can't see the additional description on the screen, but Counterpoint can. Or what if I have a customer that says, I can only wear cotton? Can you tell me what you have that's cotton? So you can see I have lots of items associated with cotton, even my polyester and satin items, but they're all in that additional description. And that's why these are coming up. So super helpful. Something else that's helpful, particularly if you have a garden center or even apparel, are attributes. So, I filled out all my information here on the main tab, and that's great. And I even maybe use some additional descriptions, but I need more ways to describe the product. That's where your attribute comes in. You can have up to 6. Now, I only have 2 enabled, but I'll show you where to enable them. So I'm going to close out of here. I'm going to go to Setup, System, Quick Setup. I'm going to go to my Item tab. And down here at the bottom is where I can enable, like, maybe I want to have some of my apparel, are they washable? Now, for any attribute that you create, you need to create a list of choices. This is what I like about attributes, is that you can't free type, you have to choose from a list, which is nice and consistent. So I could come in here and say, is it washable or not? I can add an answer to my list. Why, yes. Just going to tab. Like I said, you can have up to 6, just enable, give it a label, create a list. If you're a garden center, you can have things like annual or perennial, shade, full sun, the Latin names. So lots of things you can do with attributes. So I'm going to go back to my item record so you can see. And so here, you can see now my washable is there, and I can go into a list and I can call it up. Let's talk about units next. I'm going to get my beer for this next one because it makes more sense in my mini backpack. Now for my beer, if you look at my stocking unit, which is right over here, I sell it by the each. But, I also sell it by the 6-pack. So I need to have an alternate unit. So I'm going to go to my units tab. I'm going to go into my alternate unit lookup. And I think I already have one set up. Let's see, 6-pack. I do not, so I'm going to make one. I'm going to click on add. I'm going to call it 6-pack. Press my enter key. And I'm going to say, you got to do a little math here. It's easy math. 1 6-pack is equal to 6 eaches. So anytime I take a 6-pack and sell it, Counterpoint's going to take 6 eaches out of stock. If I receive the 6-pack, after I post the receiving, Counterpoint's going to add 6 eaches to my quantities. So you'll never see in Counterpoint where you have 2 singles and 2 6-packs. You're going to have 14 eaches. At the end of the day, everything becomes an each. I guess I needed value for the description. So 6-pack. Thank you, Counterpoint. If you want to sell by the 6-pack, you need a price. So, maybe the each is what, $3? And the 6-pack is 15. So that comes down here. If you don't sell this by the 6-pack, but you purchase it by the 6-pack, you don't need to put a price here. And by the way, Galaxy alternate units do not go for the Galaxy, but you can still leverage alternate units in purchasing. So if you want to purchase by the 6-pack, you have to have an alternate unit. And I'll show you how that plays out in a little bit. So alternate units, pretty easy. Barcodes. So I'm going to go back to my main tab here, and I'm going to give my beer a barcode, scan a UPC. So you can scan directly into this field or free type. If you free type, don't forget your check digits. So now when I go to barcodes, I can see I've got a barcode for my each, but my 6-pack has a different barcode. So I can scan my barcode to the barcode field. I can use this drop down and choose 6-pack, and then I have to have a barcode type. Now by default, the barcode type is item. For most Counterpoint users, it's PLU for Galaxy. It's just a name. Some people actually specifically make barcode types to represent, their alternate units or it might be their vendor. Counterpoint doesn't care what you call it. You can call it pineapple or avocado, but we've got to have a barcode type. So I'm just going to say this one's for my alternate one unit. Labels, you're going to have problems. So definitely have a barcode type. Okay, I'm just going to save my changes. Obviously, if you have gridded items, you need barcodes for each and every color and size. And if you want to have more than one barcode for each and every color and size, you're more than welcome. Okay, let's go to the other tab. So here's where my warranties are. Not that I'm going to give a warranty on beer, but if somebody buys this beer today, their receipt will say warranty expires or warranty good for 30 days, or I think it puts the date that expires. You can have up to 2. If this is an EBT item, I enable this. If I'm going to weigh it at point of sale, I'm going to say it's weighed. These are when you have scales built into the counter. And then I want my associates to check for ID. So I can have a prompt code of beer. Now, here's how you set one of those up. I'm just going to go into this lookup. I'm going to click on edit. So I just gave it a name. I just free type some name into the prompt code field. Give it a description. This is what the sales associate will see at point of sale. And the data type, is it going to be a date that we need to verify? Some type of alphanumeric characters? And then if you are looking for something like a date, you're going to have some type of constraint. If you're not sure how to create a constraint, just log a support ticket. We'll help you with it. And then here's the message. If the constraint isn't met, this is a message your salespeople will get. Up here, once per document. So you don't want it to be that every time that same beer is scanned, they have to, put in a date. So just once per document. Quantity sold must be 1, obviously. You can test the constraint from here. But if we were at point of sale and we scanned this item, This is what your salespeople see. Oh, enter a birthday. So if I put in today's date, they get this message. Customer must be at least 21. My little message board is very, very big today. Okay. Now, if I put in a correct date, like I put in, let's say 1960. Okay. Your salespeople won't see that message. They'll just be able to go on to the next item. But this is so you can test the constraint. A lot of people ask me where they can just manually set their min-max levels. Now, there is a tool to have Counterpoint do it for you, but some people like to set them individually. Or if you don't have any history, that tool is not going to be very helpful. So if you come down here to the item inventory box, press your enter key for non-gridded items, normal items, things that aren't apparel. You set your min and your max here. And you can have different mins and maxes for each of your locations. Like this is my storage, and here's my E. So I can have different values here for each location. For my gridded items, it's a little bit different. So I'm just going to find a gridded item here. I'll find my men's polo. Or maybe not. There it is. So to set min max for gridded items, you come down to inventory. And again, this is location specific. I pressed my enter key. Then you go to model stock. And so you can come here and just manually set in size, or if you can set them globally by clicking, set min max. I want my min max to be 5 and 10 for each color and size. And then maybe you want it to be 5 and 10 for each color and size except the smalls. You want it to be 3 and 5. You can just edit from there, but a little bit of a time saver. Other things worth noting on the inventory record, average cost. This is averaged over time. It's going to change over time because you pay different cost at different times. Standard cost standard cost is the cost you initially defined for the item. It doesn't change. And there's really no reporting value. There's some price rule value. Last cost is the last cost you paid. So when your last cost field on the main tab gets updated right here, so does the last cost here. But it's averaged cost that Counterpoint uses on reports. I get this call a lot. Hey, I'm looking at the cost of my sales on my sales report and it doesn't match my last cost. That's correct. Counterpoint's it's taking your average cost on your cost of sales. The other thing that's notable here is, again, you can see other values, like I have 130 on order. This is on a purchase order. No, I don't have this on order for any customers or any back orders or special orders or layaways or transfers. If you see something in the committed, it's committed. Maybe it's committed at point of sale. Maybe it's committed on an unposted receiver or unposted adjustment. And you want to know where that committed is. There is a view commitments button down here, which will take you to this handy report. And it'll show you, I have a lot of these on purchase orders. See, because I had 130, so you can see. Lots of purchase orders for this item. It must be popular. So view commitments will tell you what's here and committed and all these other numbers. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about vendor items. So it's pretty handy to know vendor items. So again, when you're building an item from scratch, Counterpoint automatically builds the vendor item for you. And again, no sales reporting value to this. So when I go into vendor items, it just comes up with a blank screen. So if you just use your right-facing arrow, it'll find your primary vendor. So you can see oh, you know what? I want to go back to my mini backpack. All right, let's go here. Just going to use my right-facing arrow. So you can see it's Coach. It's my primary vendor. The vendor item number copied from here. The mini backpack copied from here. The vendor list price, oh, I updated this earlier, but it copies it from here. I edited, I made an edit to it earlier. And then you can have comments. You type any comments here, they don't show up anywhere. They don't show up in purchasing or receiving. It's just informational, only order from Gina because she gives us the best price. Now, remember I talked earlier about alternate units. And if you want to have, I sell it by the each, but I want to purchase it by the 6-pack. You have to come to the purchasing tab of the vendor item record, go into the lookup, choose your alternate unit, and then the unit cost is how much the vendor charges you for the 6-pack. I'm going to say $60. 60p. So again, here's something that's very misunderstood about Counterpoint. A lot of people think when they're ordering or receiving without a PO that the last cost that's suggested to them is this. It's not. The cost that's suggested to you is always this. So if this were an each, I ordered it by the each, I sell it by the each. And I had 35 here. This is the cost that would be suggested to me in purchasing and receiving. The only time Counterpoint looks to your last cost field for purchasing and receiving is if this is blank, which is highly unlikely. Because again, when you're building the item record, that unit cost populates from here. But again, I want a preferred purchasing unit. So I'm going to say my 6-pack. And the unit cost is 60. Now, anytime I order this, the vendor always wants me to order at least 4. So if I set it to 4, and in purchasing, I try to purchase 3, Counterpoint's going to say, hey, you're supposed to purchase 4. I can bypass that message and still order 3 if I want, but I will get a pop-up. Or maybe you have a vendor that wants you to order in multiples of 2. Hey, anytime you order this, you have to order 2, 4, 6, 8. If I try to order something that's not a multiple of 2, 1, 3, 5, I'll get a warning. I'll be able to bypass the warning, but I will get a warning. This lead time, I really wish had been better thought out. It's the lead time for this item. How much time typically lapses in between, a purchase order and your last receiving for this item? All right. If you want to calculate lead time, you click on auto calculate. You have to have enough information, and this is what you'll get. And unfortunately, it's item by item. There's not a global auto calculate. You visit the items that you want to know where your lead time or what it is. The other useful thing here, last order, see the PO number, the PO date, how many I ordered, the cost, and last received, even though it says receipt, it's received. Again, you see your PO, and then your receiver number and your receive date. If you want to get kind of more of a list of your vendor item records and last received, first POs, if you go to purchasing and you go to vendor items here, and you go to your table view, you can always go into your column designer and you could, put in, your last receiver number or your last PO number or PO date or PO, there you go, all that. So then you get this, nice bird's eye view. Okay, that's vendor items. Let's go ahead and go into the Q&A. See if anyone has any questions. Or no, let's finish the PowerPoint presentation first. Okay, so hopefully after this session, you know a little bit more about things on the item records you can use, alternate units, notes, barcodes, warranties, prompt codes, how to look at your quantitative values, set your min-max by clicking on the inventory box, and how to set your preferred purchasing unit on your vendor item records, and knowing that cost that's suggested on purchasing and receiving documents is coming from the vendor item record, not from the last cost field. On Friday, when you get your link to the video, you'll also have a survey. It's pretty quick. You can remain anonymous, happy face, sad face type of thing. You can also give me some topic suggestions for 2024. Or if you want to fill out the survey today because it was such a great class, www.cksystem.com/training bites survey. Something new we're doing this year, it's called the C&K Quarterly, an inside look to what's driving retail innovation. Our next one is September 27th. So you'll see an email for that probably sometime later this month or early next month. We talk about things like retail operations, product updates to Counterpoint, or maybe even NCR Secure Pay and any other news we have, maybe something from development. I believe they're working on a handheld solution that we might all really like. So make sure you attend. Our next date is September 13th because of Labor Day. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite subject, sales and merchandise analysis. Everyone loves reports. So sales and merchandise analysis are two of the three reports that you actually have some control over. So I'll show you how to design those and save them and recall them. And then we'll look at some other useful reports, in particular, some reports built into Counterpoint to help you with loss prevention. So make sure you sign up and see me on September the 13th. If you want custom training, your data, your database, give me a call. Main number 888-476-7911. I'm at extension 3. Or you can email me at training@cksystem.com. Sometimes things just make more sense when you're training on your data because that's what you're used to seeing instead of my golf store. Okay, with that, let's take a look at the Q&A. And let's see. Okay, I see something in chat. Today. How do you set up an item to prompt for quantity when the item is selected in touchscreen? That's a really good question. That switch is not on the item record. It's in touchscreen design. So if you have a button linked to an item in touchscreen, and I'll just pull this up so you can see real quick. Yeah, so it's not on the item record. You would think it would be, but it's not. That would seem logical to me too. So if you go to your touchscreen, I'm just going to go to my button editor here. Oh, Counterpoint gets mad if you try and go into your designer when point of sale is open. So let me go close that. And goodbye, because I want to get into my touchscreen designer. Yes, I'm sure. Okay, so let's go back to setup, point of sale, and we'll go back to touchscreen codes here. So if I have a button linked to an item, which I don't, so let me just make one real quick. So I'm just going to say item. And then I select the item down here. I can posit quantity. So every time my people touch that button, a quantity box will pop up. But Gina, I don't use buttons to sell my items. Okay. If you go to options here, I'm sorry, if you go to, options, and you click on posit quantity, this is global. So it's only kind of practical if you're like a garden center or a grocery store. But what this means is every single time an item is scanned, pop up the quantity box. So not on the item record, it's in your touchscreen designer. Good question. No, I do not want to save that. All right. Any other questions? I don't see anything else in chat. I'm going to check the Q&A real quick. Takes my Q&A screen a little bit of time to load. Okay, these are from July. So nothing in the Q&A.
It looks like there's one in the Q&A that's not showing up on yours. There was a question about if the additional descriptions can get mapped to Magento and make them searchable for online customers.
No. I mean, you can use, I think you can use one of them, but you can't use all of them. Yeah, it depends on how you're configured. I mean, some people use the just the description field, from the main page of the item record. But check with whoever your whatever website you're using, because that's going to determine whether the connector can do it or not. But that's a good question. Wonder why I didn't see that. Okay, that question's from May the 3rd. Hey, do you see any other ones, David?
Nope, that was the only one.
Okay, beautiful. Well, everyone, thank you for your time today. Come back and see me on September 13th. It'll be fun. And have a really great rest of your week and wonderful weekend.